Okay.
Okay, anytime, wait till you take work session.
Well, Kirk, it is nice to have you in that chair again so that we can talk some more. Pick up where we left off a couple of
Good.
years ago when you were in Dallas.
Sure.
Right. Your movie now, The Final Countdown, you spent how many weeks or months on the Nimitz?
Well, first, it's really not my movie. It's really my son's movie. My son, Peter Vincent Douglas, is the producer of it and really put the whole thing together. I'm the one that said it couldn't be done because I never thought they were able to get be able to get an aircraft carrier, but he's persistent, and he finally ended up with the largest nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the world, the Nimitz, and we worked aboard the Nimitz for about 12 weeks. Peter was aboard more or less for about 8 months, on and off, making preparations. But it's one of the enjoyments of being an actor that you never know where the next picture will take you. And The Final Countdown took us to a really exciting part of my life because living aboard the Nimitz and meeting the officers and the crew and working with them was a very exciting part of my life. And of course, when the Nimitz went to the Persian Gulf, we were quite concerned. And when Captain Bassler came back here, and the other day we had a reunion aboard the Nimitz, it was a nice sentimental journey.
They were at sea continuously for 144 days, which set a new record.
That's right.
Do you think that you could withstand that kind of thing?
I think I'd find it difficult. Of course, they showed us, yesterday Captain Bassler showed us some films. For one of the first times in American naval history, they permitted the men to have 2 cans of beer. And they had these films taken of all these men that we knew, and so many of them had been in the picture out in the Indian Ocean, lining up for these 2 cans of beer. And beer never looked so good. It was the weather was so hot. And it was good to see them in that situation, in such good spirits. But you don't realize until you're at sea aboard an aircraft carrier what goes on. See, when a lot of what we shot of the picture in port, they're on limited crew. But once you go to sea and the planes are flying off and flying on 24 hours a day, 3 o'clock in the morning, planes are hitting the deck and taking off. There's no 9 to 5. And I had the captain's in-port cabin, and I thought, well, where's he going to sleep? Why would he give me this very luxurious cabin? And I realized that this luxurious cabin, the captain only uses when he's in port. But when he's at sea, he has almost a cubbyhole right off the bridge because he's on call instantaneously 24 hours a day. If anything comes up, the captain is ready. They see a ship. If he's asleep, they wake him up. He's got to be informed of everything that goes on. So you begin to realize that the people in the armed forces, they really deserve their pay. They really do quite a job.
I couldn't agree with you more, Kirk. You have to have, I think, a very special relationship between a father and a son to work together in a film project the way you and Peter have done. And one thought that occurs to me and has time after time, Kirk, is that you're a self-made man. You came from very humble background, immigrant parents, and you've worked all your life, earned money since you were a little kid to help support the family. Now your children come along, your boys, and they all came along during your more affluent years. What have you tried to teach your children about affluence versus poor?
Well, I've said to my 4 sons, and they're all against my wishes, they're all in making movies. Joel's making a movie now in Alabama. He's Michael's younger son. He's making a movie now with cobra snakes. And my younger son, Eric, is studying acting in London. And I've discouraged them all of them, because I think it's a very difficult field to go in. But I've tried. I've told my kids that they have not had my advantages, because being born poor, I had the advantage of having a motivation to get somewhere. Well, my kids, none of them were born poor. They were accustomed to seeing, you know, Sinatra, Gregory Peck, Burt Lancaster stars, and, you know, they knew they were always going to have enough to eat. So I have more admiration for them, that born with a certain amount of affluence, they still have had the motivation. And that's the important thing, whether a kid is poor or rich, is that they have motivation to do something in life. All I wanted for my sons is that they do something. And so in that way, I'm very fortunate, because all of them have a motivation to do something. Michael's done quite a bit. Joel's beginning to do quite well. And of course, I think Peter, in producing the final countdown, you know, has achieved something that kind of baffles me even now. I must say, it sort of shocks me. How did he pull it all together? But that's gratifying to me.
Kirk, one last question, and that is, having come from this poor background where you knew what it was like to be hungry, and not too many of us know what that is truly like, but do you still cling to some little traits or habits or something that revert back to your poor days?
I certainly do. For example, when I was a boy in Amsterdam, New York, I remember the ice box. Of course, there was no refrigerator there. Had no ice in it. And I remember so many times you opened the door and there was a little can of oil in the back, way in the corner. No food. And I've realized that since that time, my refrigerator is stacked with food. If you ever come over to my house, there's always extra food. There's enough for everyone. And it's a strange thing, but it's important to me that refrigerator has always got a lot of food. My kids sometimes kid me about that. Geez, make sure there's enough food in the refrigerator. Dad will get angry. Yeah, but it's one of those peculiar psychological things that stay with you, and that is the early memory of an empty icebox. So later on, you want to open that and you see food. There's always enough to eat.
What was the can of oil for?
Well, usually a little can of oil they use for frying.
Oh, I see what
cooking.
you meant. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought you meant like 3-in-1 oil or something.
No.
Okay,
No.
wonder why it was in
No.
the icebox. Kirk, as always, it's delightful to talk with you.
Bobbie, it's nice seeing you. I hope I get a chance to get down to Big D soon.
Oh, I hope so too.
I know people in Dallas. I've got friends in Fort Worth, that whole area, and I like Texas, and I hope we'll get a chance next time we'll talk in Dallas.
Well, I enjoyed the final countdown, and I look forward to your next
Good.
film.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
Okay, Bobbie?
Kirk, the Nimitz was at sea 144 days, set a new record. I wonder, do you think that you could have endured that sort of thing?
Can you change your shot a little?
Don't need to. We'll just keep rolling. Kirk, you and Peter must have a very special relationship to be able to work together on this project with him as producer and you as the star. You come from a very humble background, immigrant parents. All your life you've worked from little kid on. You're a self-made man. Your children now have come along during your affluent years. What have you tried to teach your children about rich versus poor? Do you still have any traits that you revert to? Let me start that over. Are there any traits that you sometimes go back to that take you back to your poor days? All right. And let me just do some reactions now. that you're doing.
Okay, very good.
Thank you so much.